Yo, what's good? It's Skano. Since I can recall, probably as early as middle school, grade school, we were taught about the atrocities that were committed upon, you know, Jewish people that took place in the Holocaust, committed by Germany. And it's become like a symbol of, you know, the levels of depravity, that corrupt rulers can inflict upon people, like the status symbol of evil. And I would not try to understate, you know, the many atrocities that Jewish people were, subjected to. So it's not about you know, minimalization, but it took for me to become an adult for me to, learn of the many, uh, you know, crimes against humanity, that we were not taught in American school system, like the Congolese. So I think roughly between 5 million, who can actually put a real number on these things, but estimated 2 million Jewish folks, who were killed during the Holocaust. The Congo, under the rule of Belgium King, the King of Belgium, Leopold, is estimated to be anywhere between 10 and 20 million Congolese. Now, in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, early 1900s, under the guise of being a humanitarian. Now, this was during the what was considered, a resource grab, for lack of better, description, as far as what was going on in Africa. The European powers, you know, they was just trying to, stake a claim any and everywhere in Africa because, they had realized how many resources were available, how rich you could become. So systematically, they colonized Africa, and the Congo, man, the Congolese people, I mean, they were subjected to some of the most brutal conditions and tactics, and like I said, under the guise, because this couldn't be overt, you know, of humanitarian efforts. So as Leopold, grabbed control of the Congo, you know, a lot of these African leaders, you know, were signing contracts because this couldn't happen without the assistance of African leaders. Whether some of them turned, a blind eye to what was being committed for the sake of personal wealth, the gain of wealth, or those who were just naive or, just, like I said, deceived. These contracts that they could not even read the languages to, and they had, to be, they got finessed, you know, and they realized they had no control over what was taking place, you know, in these sectors. But so the main purpose of, Leopold wanting to take control of the Congo, was to extract rubber, natural raw rubber, which at the time was like, you know, one of the most precious commodities, in early industry, akin to what steel was when it first, so everybody wanted this material, this rubber, You know what I'm saying? So the demand was definitely there. So under that premise, set up these work camps. If you didn't meet quota, it was basically slavery, all over again. Same conditions, and black Americans understand, you know, the methods that were employed on our ancestors, you know, black Americans. But same type of machine, you know what I'm saying? So if you didn't meet quota, you could be flogged to death. Amputation of limbs, hands, primarily hands being amputated if you did not meet quota as far as production, rape, murder, the disease, So by the end of that, in it, 23 years, Leopold ruled Belgium. I mean, you know, the Congo. 15 to 20 million Congolese died in that time period. And it took for, you know, I believe it was a British businessman who he ended up turning into like you know, a reporter, you know, and after going into the Congo and seeing the atrocities that were being committed, he wrote a story about it that went, national. But there were other, attempts to bring forth this, what was going on to light. But, obviously anyone who was found to be in betrayal of, Leopold's efforts, you were executed. So, they kept a rap on what was going on, but it got out. It leaked out, you know, slowly trickled out. And some point early in the 1900s, Leopold was, ousted as far as his power. Now, as I said, man, there are many, there are probably so many ethnicity groups that we will never, because it was never recorded. And if it was recorded, it was either lost to time or it was purposely destroyed in order to, conceal the evils that were committed. And as I said, this is not an attempt to try to, play a game of, you know, who suffered more. But it's just to point out, because and not to justify, you know, uh, wrong is wrong. But in a lot of these cases, in what I call domestic terrorism, the shootings that occur in our urban communities, and oftentimes in these stories or these videos, which are on the internet for the most part, the comment section is always full of, you know, race baiters. And one of their favorite things to, one of their favorite slogans, the usual suspects. You know what I'm saying? Anytime there's a shooting, a killing in the urban communities, gang related, etc. Here we have the race baiters come flooding to the comment section, talking about the usual suspects. And I agree that oftentimes these are not gang related shootings. It is domestic terrorism. I agree. But when we speak of terrorism, because y'all throw that word around, quite freely, colonizing most of the free world, was that not an act of terrorism? So when it's your government, and my government too, I'm an American, but it's more so y'all's government than it ever will be mine. When it's your government that commits these atrocities, for the sake of pushing the American agenda, to spread capitalism, colonial, that's not terrorism, you know, that's progression. And you see how that works. So you see how atrocities can be committed in the first place. All you have to do is convince, you know, the majority, of a population that what is being committed is for the better, you know, of the entirety of the population. That's how people can do these things, justify it. And people not only turn a blind eye, but if not be complicit, at least in agreement. It's just a way of things, right? So never forget that these urban communities that are, have become a bit of a blight on American society. Never forget the system that put these conditions in place, that put certain parameters in place that allow these conditions to flourish, I should say. And then stand back and shake your head and say, you know, look at those people. And this is how people of power can justify, you know, discrimination, genocide, you know, because we have to have upper society and a lower society. I don't care where you at. If you're British, you're African, you know. But 20 million people, and a majority of Americans, well, I can't say that. As I said, man, I've known of the Holocaust since I remember learning how to read. And of course, we learn about American slavery and the Atlantic slave trade in general, but there's so many, the rabbit hole goes so deep, man. And like I said, these are things that no one is in a rush to, you know, bring forth to public light. It's out there. The information is out there. So, as I said, man, this is not an attempt to minimize, it's not about Jewish people, but to make a point, that when we speak of the Holocaust, and when it's like been ingrained in our minds that the Holocaust was, the greatest crime against humanity ever committed. And as crazy as this sound, man, it's not even close. It's not even close to how many black bodies from, Africa to America, that have been destroyed, to fuel this machine that y'all call capitalism. But it is what it is. No ops left, Scano. You already know.